Everything valuable has a price. Strength has a price. Freedom has a price. Confidence has a price. Peace has a price. The question isn't whether you'll pay. It is what you'll pay with. You can pay today with discipline, or you can pay tomorrow with regret. Every excuse is a debt. Every distraction charges interest. Every day you delay, the bill becomes larger. This audiobook is about the one investment that never loses value. If you're ready to stop borrowing from your future and start earning the life you deserve, then keep listening. The price has always been the same. Discipline. Chapter 1. Everything has a price. Look around at the people you admire. The athlete standing on the podium. The entrepreneur who built a company from nothing. The artist whose work moves millions. The soldier who remains calm when everyone else is falling apart. Most people see the reward. Very few see the price. That is where they make their first mistake. They assume success arrived through luck, talent, timing, connections. But every meaningful achievement leaves behind an invisible trail. Early mornings, late nights, repeated failures, endless practice. Countless moments when quitting would have been easier than continuing. Everything has a price. That is the first truth you must accept. Not because life is unfair, because life is consistent. Nothing valuable arrives without an exchange. Strength demands effort. Confidence demands discomfort. Wisdom demands mistakes. Freedom demands responsibility. Peace demands self-control. Everything has a price. The problem is that most people refuse to pay while expecting to receive. They want confidence without facing fear. They want wealth without sacrifice. They want discipline without changing habits. They want respect without earning it. Life doesn't work that way. Life never has. You have a choice. Pay now, or pay later. But understand this. You're paying either way. That's the key. Many people believe avoiding difficult work saves them from pain. It doesn't. It simply postpones it. Imagine two people. One wakes up early every morning to train. The other stays in bed because it feels comfortable. The first person pays with temporary discomfort. The second person pays with declining health. Different payment. Same reality. Now imagine someone who studies every evening after work. Their friends laugh. Their schedule feels exhausting. Years later, new opportunities appear because they prepared when nobody was watching. Meanwhile, another person chose entertainment over education. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Months passed. Years passed. Then promotions disappeared. Choices became fewer. Regret quietly arrived. Again, different payment. Same reality. Everything has a price. The uncomfortable truth is that comfort is never free. Comfort simply sends the bill later. Most people don't recognize this because delayed consequences are difficult to see. Eat unhealthy food today. Nothing dramatic happens tomorrow. Avoid saving money this month. Nothing changes immediately. Skip one workout. Ignore one responsibility. Waste one afternoon. Life seems exactly the same. But invisible debts are accumulating. Interest is growing. One day the bill arrives. Suddenly people ask, how did this happen? It happened one small decision at a time. That's how every disciplined life is built. And that's also how every undisciplined life slowly falls apart. One decision. Repeated. Again. And again. You're paying either way. Consider an Olympic athlete. People celebrate the medal. They don't celebrate the thousands of mornings when nobody applauded. Nobody posts videos of repetitive training. Nobody interviews the athlete after another ordinary practice session. The world notices the reward. The athlete remembers the price. The same is true for great entrepreneurs. People admire successful businesses. They rarely see years filled with uncertainty, rejection, failed products, and sleepless nights. They see the destination, not the payment. The same is true for musicians, doctors, pilots, teachers, craftsmen, parents, leaders. Even strong relationships carry a price. Trust requires honesty. Respect requires consistency. Love requires sacrifice. Everything worthwhile demands something from you before it gives something back. That is not punishment. That is the rule. Once you understand this rule, life begins making sense. Because you stop asking, "Why is this difficult?" Instead, you ask, "What is this success asking me to pay?" That question changes everything. You have a choice. Every morning you wake up holding two currencies: time and attention. Where you spend them determines your future. Spend them carelessly. Your future becomes expensive. Spend them intentionally. Your future becomes valuable. The payment always comes first. The reward comes second. Never reverse that order. Most people do. They wait to feel motivated before becoming disciplined. They wait to feel confident before taking action. They wait until conditions become perfect. That day never arrives. Discipline doesn't begin after confidence. Confidence begins after discipline. That's the key. Action creates belief, not the other way around. This is why disciplined people appear lucky. But luck has very little to do with it. What you're actually seeing is years of invisible payments finally becoming visible rewards. The audience only sees the harvest. They missed the planting. They celebrate the victory. They ignored the preparation. Remember that whenever you compare yourself to someone ahead of you, never envy the reward if you are unwilling to pay the price. Because rewards and prices always travel together. They cannot be separated. It is not about talent. It's about discipline. It is not about intelligence. It's about consistency. It is not about perfect circumstances. It's about repeated choices. You don't need their permission. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You simply need to become willing to make payments that others refuse to make. That is where extraordinary lives begin, not with dramatic moments, with ordinary discipline, repeated daily. There is another truth most people avoid. Every excuse is also a payment. Every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," you're paying. Every time you choose distraction over responsibility, you're paying. Every time fear makes your decisions, you're paying. The payment simply arrives later, disguised as missed opportunities. That is why excuses feel free, until they become expensive. Discipline works the opposite way. Discipline feels expensive today, then becomes incredibly cheap tomorrow because it keeps producing rewards long after the effort has ended. Everything has a price. You're paying either way. Choose your payment wisely. Repeat those words until they become part of your identity. Because they are true whether you believe them or not. The disciplined person understands this and willingly accepts today's discomfort to build tomorrow's freedom. The undisciplined person avoids today's discomfort only to inherit tomorrow's suffering. Both people pay. Only one chooses the better investment. That is the foundation of a disciplined life. Not perfection, not motivation, not talent. Simply the willingness to pay the right price before expecting the reward. Master this principle, and every other lesson in this audiobook becomes easier to understand. Because discipline is not punishment. It is preparation. It is not a burden. It is an investment. It is not something life takes from you. It is something that allows life to give back far more than you ever imagined. Everything has a price. You're paying either way. Choose your payment wisely. That's the key. Now that you understand the first law of a disciplined life, it's time to confront the force that convinces most people to avoid paying that price in the first place. Chapter 2. Comfort is the most expensive addiction. If discipline has a greatest enemy, it is not failure. It is not fear. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is comfort. Comfort is quiet. Comfort is seductive. Comfort never announces itself as a danger. It arrives disguised as something you deserve. Take it easy. You've worked hard enough. You can start tomorrow. 1 more episode. 5 more minutes. 1 more scroll. It sounds harmless. It feels harmless. But comfort is patient. It does not destroy your future in one dramatic moment. It does something far more dangerous. It slowly teaches you to avoid discomfort. And once your mind learns to escape discomfort, discipline begins to disappear. That is why comfort is the most expensive addiction. Not because comfort itself is evil, but because unchecked comfort slowly replaces growth. Comfort always sends the invoice later. Remember that. Repeat it until it becomes impossible to forget. Comfort always sends the invoice later. Modern life has perfected the business of comfort. Everything is designed to remove effort. Food arrives at your door. Entertainment never ends. Your phone delivers endless distraction before you even ask for it. Algorithms study your attention better than you study your own habits. Every notification whispers the same message. Stay here. Keep consuming. Don't think. Don't struggle. Don't be uncomfortable. The world profits when you remain distracted, but your future pays the price. You have a choice. Technology is not your enemy. Convenience is not your enemy. The real enemy is unconscious comfort. The habit of choosing what feels good instead of what makes you better. That's the key. Think about endless scrolling. Most people never intend to lose an hour. They unlock their phone for one reason. Then another video appears. Another headline. Another short clip. Another recommendation. Minutes quietly become hours. Hours quietly become weeks. Weeks quietly become years. Nothing dramatic happened, yet everything changed. Books remained unread. Ideas remained unfinished. Dreams remained postponed. The cost wasn't obvious, until one day they realized time had disappeared. Comfort always sends the invoice later. The same thing happens every morning. The alarm rings. You know exactly what needs to happen. Get up. Move. Start. Instead, another voice appears. 5 more minutes. 5 minutes become 20. 20 becomes 40. Soon, you're rushing through the day instead of leading it. It feels like a small decision. It isn't. Every morning, you either strengthen discipline or strengthen comfort. There is no neutral choice. You are training someone, either your disciplined self or your comfortable self. Which one are you feeding? Easy today becomes hard tomorrow. The person who refuses to wake up early today eventually finds it difficult to wake up at all. The person who avoids exercise today eventually struggles to climb stairs. The person who delays learning today eventually falls behind tomorrow. Easy today becomes hard tomorrow. The rule never changes. Now consider difficult conversations. Perhaps you need to apologize. Perhaps you need to set boundaries. Perhaps you need to tell someone the truth. But avoiding conflict feels easier, so you stay silent. For today, it works. Tomorrow, the tension grows. Weeks later, resentment appears. Months later, relationships begin to break. The conversation you avoided for 10 minutes becomes a problem lasting 10 years. Comfort always sends the invoice later. This is how life works, not because life is cruel, because reality compounds. Every avoided responsibility becomes heavier. Every postponed decision becomes more expensive. Every shortcut creates a future detour. Think about shortcuts. People love shortcuts. Lose weight without changing your diet. Build wealth without learning. Master a skill without practicing. Become confident without facing fear. Everyone wants the reward. Almost nobody wants the price. But shortcuts usually extend the journey. The person searching for the easiest path often spends years going in circles. Meanwhile, the disciplined person quietly walks the difficult road once. One road feels harder. One road actually is shorter. Discipline feels expensive only at the beginning. Comfort feels cheap only at the beginning. Notice the difference. One becomes easier. The other becomes harder. Imagine learning a musical instrument. The first month is frustrating. Your fingers hurt. Nothing sounds beautiful. Progress feels invisible. Most people quit. Not because they cannot learn, because they cannot tolerate temporary discomfort. Years later they say, "I wish I had started." The disciplined person who continued no longer struggles. Playing became natural. What once required effort now creates joy. Discipline feels expensive only at the beginning. Everything valuable follows this pattern. Reading, saving money, building a business, learning a language, exercising, meditating, keeping promises. The beginning is always the hardest part. Because your old identity resists change. Your brain loves familiar patterns, even unhealthy ones. Why? Because familiar feels safe. Not because it is better, simply because it is known. That is why discipline often feels unnatural at first. You're introducing a new identity. Your old habits fight back. Your comfort zone protests. It whispers, "This isn't you." Ignore that voice. It is describing your past, not your future. You don't become disciplined by waiting until discipline feels comfortable. You become disciplined by acting while it still feels uncomfortable. That's the key. Comfort trains dependence. Discipline trains capability. Comfort asks, "How can I avoid effort?" Discipline asks, "Who can I become through effort?" Those are completely different lives. One shrinks, one expands, one survives, one grows. You have a choice. Every decision is casting a vote. Every time you choose the harder workout, you vote for strength. Every time you finish reading instead of scrolling, you vote for wisdom. Every time you tell the difficult truth, you vote for integrity. Every time you keep your promise after motivation disappears, you vote for discipline. Votes become habits. Habits become identity. Identity becomes destiny. That is why small comforts are so dangerous. They rarely remain small. One excuse becomes a pattern. One delay becomes a lifestyle. One shortcut becomes a mindset. Soon, comfort is no longer something you enjoy. It becomes something you require. That is addiction. Not to substances, but to ease, to convenience, to avoiding effort. The strongest people in the world are not addicted to comfort. They appreciate comfort, but they never depend on it. They can work when tired, focus when distracted, continue when bored, lead when uncertain. Because discipline has replaced comfort as their default setting. Imagine two futures. In the first, you continue choosing whatever feels easiest. Nothing changes overnight. Years pass quietly. Then, one day, you wonder where your potential went. In the second future, you repeatedly choose temporary discomfort. You wake up, you train, you learn, you finish what you start. Again, nothing dramatic happens overnight. But years later, people call you lucky. They admire your confidence, your success, your calm. They never see the thousands of invisible moments when you chose discipline over comfort. That is always the difference. Not one giant decision. Thousands of small ones. Comfort always sends the invoice later. Easy today becomes hard tomorrow. Discipline feels expensive only at the beginning. Burn those words into your memory, because they will guide you every time comfort invites you to postpone your future. The life you want is rarely hiding behind another easy decision. It is almost always waiting behind a difficult one. Choose that difficult step. Again, and again, and again. Because every time you refuse the addiction of comfort, you strengthen the discipline that will eventually build your freedom. You now understand why comfort quietly steals potential, but avoiding comfort is only half the battle. The next challenge is learning what happens to every difficulty you refuse to face. Chapter 3. The pain you avoid never disappears. There is one lie that has quietly ruined more lives than failure ever could. It sounds reasonable. It feels harmless. It whispers, "I'll deal with it later." Those 5 words have destroyed dreams, ended relationships, buried potential. Not because the problem disappeared, because it grew. Pain has a rule. If you face it, it becomes smaller. If you avoid it, it becomes larger. There is no third option. You cannot negotiate with reality. You cannot hide from consequences. You cannot postpone responsibility forever. You cannot escape the bill. That's the key. Most people believe avoidance creates relief. It doesn't. It creates interest. Think about unpaid debt. Ignore one payment. The amount increases. Ignore another. Now penalties appear. Months later, the original debt is almost unrecognizable. Avoided pain works exactly the same way. It compounds. Avoided pain compounds. Burn those words into your mind. Because once you understand them, you stop running from discomfort and start moving toward it. Consider something as simple as cleaning your room. It takes 15 minutes today. You ignore it. Tomorrow it takes 30. Next week, it feels overwhelming. Soon, you don't even want to open the door. The room didn't become impossible overnight. Avoidance made it impossible. The same pattern exists everywhere. An unanswered email, an unpaid bill, an unfinished project, a difficult conversation, a medical appointment. One small delay becomes one large burden. You have a choice. Face the small pain now, or face the large pain later. Either way, pain collects its payment. You cannot escape the bill. Look at your health. Skipping one workout doesn't ruin your body. Eating one unhealthy meal changes very little. Staying awake too late once isn't a disaster. That is why unhealthy habits are so deceptive. The consequences arrive slowly, until suddenly they don't. One day, climbing the stairs leaves you breathless. One day, your doctor gives you news you never expected. One day, your energy disappears. People ask, how did this happen? It happened one avoided workout at a time, one ignored habit at a time, one comfortable decision repeated thousands of times. Avoided pain compounds. Now imagine another person. They wake up early. They exercise even when they don't feel like it. Their muscles ache. Their lungs burn. Their alarm feels cruel. For weeks there is little reward, but they continue. Months later, they move with confidence. Years later, they possess strength that money cannot buy. The pain never disappeared. It transformed. Temporary discomfort created permanent strength. That is the difference. One person suffered now. The other suffered later. Both experienced pain. Only one chose useful pain. Temporary discomfort creates permanent strength. Remember that. Life never asks, "Would you like discomfort?" Life asks, "When would you prefer it?" Now think about relationships. Imagine two friends. One notices tension growing. Something feels wrong. Instead of ignoring it, they choose an uncomfortable conversation. They listen. They apologize. They speak honestly. The conversation lasts 30 difficult minutes. The friendship survives. Another person notices the same tension, but silence feels easier. Sooner or later, it will fix itself. Weeks pass. Months pass. Distance grows. Assumptions replace communication. Eventually, the relationship collapses. The uncomfortable conversation they avoided for 30 minutes becomes years of regret. Avoided pain compounds. The same happens in marriage. The same happens between parents and children. The same happens between co-workers. Truth spoken early often prevents suffering later. Silence may feel comfortable today. It often becomes heartbreak tomorrow. You cannot escape the bill. Now let's talk about decisions. One of the greatest forms of suffering is indecision. Many people think choosing is dangerous, so they don't choose. They stay in jobs they dislike. They postpone starting businesses. They delay ending unhealthy relationships. They wait for certainty. Years disappear while they are waiting. Eventually, life makes the decision for them. The company closes. The relationship ends anyway. The opportunity belongs to someone else. Waiting felt safe. Waiting was simply another form of paying. You have a choice. Make difficult decisions while you still control them, or allow circumstances to make them for you. One creates growth. The other creates regret. That's the key. Successful people are not fearless. They simply understand something others don't. Problems rarely improve with age. They usually become more expensive. Imagine a crack in the wall of your home. Today, it's tiny. You ignore it. Rain enters. Winter expands it. Months later, the foundation is damaged. Repairing the crack would have taken one afternoon. Repairing the house now costs thousands. Life constantly offers these tiny cracks. One neglected habit. One ignored warning. One broken promise. One postponed responsibility. The earlier you act, the cheaper the solution. Discipline understands timing. Comfort believes tomorrow is always available. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. Opportunity certainly isn't. Avoided pain compounds. Now think about learning. A young student avoids mathematics because it feels difficult. One chapter becomes 2. 2 become 10. Eventually, the subject feels impossible. The difficulty didn't suddenly appear. Avoidance created it. Another student struggles today. They ask questions. They make mistakes. They stay after class. Learning is uncomfortable, but every difficult lesson makes the next lesson easier. Temporary discomfort creates permanent strength. This principle extends beyond school. Learning a language, starting a business, building confidence, speaking in public, leading a team. Everything begins with awkwardness. Everything becomes easier through repetition. Those who avoid beginners' discomfort often remain beginners forever. Those who embrace beginners' discomfort eventually become masters. You don't need talent to begin. You need courage to remain uncomfortable long enough to improve. You don't need everyone's approval. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need certainty. You only need the willingness to stop running. Because every step away from discomfort is also a step away from growth. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. It's not about having an easier life. It's about becoming stronger than the challenges life presents. Discipline changes your relationship with pain. Instead of asking, "How do I avoid this?" you begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" That single question changes everything. Pain becomes instruction. Failure becomes feedback. Difficulty becomes training. Obstacles become teachers. Every challenge carries a lesson that comfort could never provide. The strongest people you know are rarely those who experience the least pain. They are the ones who stopped running from it. They understood that temporary discomfort creates permanent strength. Every workout strengthened more than muscles. Every rejection strengthened confidence. Every failure strengthened wisdom. Every difficult conversation strengthened character. That is why disciplined people seem calm under pressure. They have already practiced discomfort. Pressure is no longer unfamiliar. It is simply another opportunity to grow. Meanwhile, the person who constantly avoids discomfort panics when life becomes difficult, not because they are weak, because they are untrained. Discipline is training. Comfort is neglect. One prepares you for reality. The other leaves you surprised by it. You cannot escape the bill. The only question is whether you will pay in small daily installments or one enormous payment later. Choose wisely, because every day presents the same decision. Face the difficult task, or allow it to become tomorrow's crisis. Speak the difficult truth, or live with silent resentment. Train your body, or watch it weaken. Learn the skill, or regret never acquiring it. The bill always arrives. Avoided pain compounds. Temporary discomfort creates permanent strength. You cannot escape the bill. Those three truths separate ordinary lives from extraordinary ones. The disciplined person understands that pain is not the enemy. Unnecessary suffering is. And the surest way to create unnecessary suffering is to keep postponing the discomfort that could transform you today. Now you understand why running from pain never works. But discipline is about more than enduring discomfort. It is about discovering what that discomfort ultimately purchases. Chapter 4. Discipline buys freedom. Most people misunderstand discipline. They see routines, schedules, rules, boundaries, commitments, and they reach one conclusion. That looks restrictive. They believe discipline takes freedom away, but that belief is exactly backward. Discipline does not imprison you. It releases you. The person without discipline feels free today. The disciplined person becomes free tomorrow. That is the difference. Freedom is purchased. That's the key. Look around. Who truly has freedom? Is it the person buried in debt, forced to work every hour just to survive? Or the person who spent years saving, investing, and living below their means? One made disciplined financial choices. The other made emotional financial choices. Years later, one has options. The other has obligations. Discipline creates options. Money itself does not create freedom. Control creates freedom. A large income without discipline often becomes a large problem. A modest income managed with discipline often becomes lasting security. This is why some lottery winners lose everything. This is why some ordinary workers quietly become millionaires. The difference isn't always how much they earn. It is how consistently they prepare. Freedom belongs to the prepared. Imagine two people receiving the exact same paycheck every month. The first spends everything. Every raise creates more spending. Every bonus disappears. Every unexpected expense creates panic. The second saves first, invests consistently, avoids unnecessary debt, lives below their means. For years, their lives appear almost identical. Then, one day, something unexpected happens. The economy changes. A company downsizes. An opportunity appears in another city. The first person cannot move. They cannot quit. They cannot adapt. They are trapped. The second person calmly chooses their next step, not because they were luckier, because discipline purchased flexibility. Freedom is purchased. Now think about your body. Many people believe discipline means denying themselves pleasure, waking up early, eating nutritious food, exercising consistently, sleeping on time. It sounds restrictive until you compare it with the alternative. Imagine reaching 50 years old. Your knees hurt. Your back aches. Simple activities become exhausting. Travel becomes difficult. Playing with your grandchildren becomes painful. Is that freedom? Or is that dependence? Now imagine someone who trained consistently for decades. Not perfectly. Consistently. They walk without pain. They carry their own luggage. They climb mountains. They explore new places. They enjoy energy that many younger people have already lost. Which person has more freedom? The one who sacrificed comfort years ago, or the one sacrificing mobility today? Temporary discipline creates lasting freedom. Your future body is being built by today's habits. Every healthy meal, every workout, every hour of quality sleep, every glass of water. These are not restrictions. They are purchases. You're buying a stronger future. Freedom belongs to the prepared. Now consider time. Everyone says, "I don't have enough time." Usually, that isn't true. Most people don't lack time. They lack disciplined attention. There are people accomplishing extraordinary things with the same 24 hours you possess. Why? Because they guard their attention. They decide what deserves their focus. They schedule what matters. They eliminate what doesn't. Discipline creates time. Imagine someone who plans tomorrow before going to bed. Their clothes are ready. Their priorities are clear. Their calendar is organized. They begin working immediately. Now compare them to someone who wakes up and decides everything in the moment. What should I do first? Where did I put my keys? What deserves my attention? Hours disappear through indecision. Not because life became harder, because preparation never happened. Preparation saves time. Confusion wastes it. Freedom belongs to the prepared. Look at the greatest performers in any field. Professional athletes, elite military units, successful entrepreneurs, accomplished musicians, world-class surgeons. People often imagine they became successful because they lived without limits. The opposite is true. Their lives contain more structure than most people could imagine. Athletes eat at scheduled times. They train according to carefully designed plans. They sleep intentionally. They recover intentionally. Their routines are not cages. Their routines are launch pads. The entrepreneur who appears spontaneous usually protects every hour of deep work. The best-selling author often writes at the same time every day. The great musician practices scales long after becoming famous. Why? Because routines remove unnecessary decisions. Energy is preserved for what matters. Discipline creates options. Steve Jobs became famous for wearing nearly the same outfit every day. Why? Not because clothing didn't matter. Because decision fatigue did. Every unnecessary decision consumes mental energy. Disciplined people understand this. They simplify the ordinary, so they can excel at the extraordinary. That's the key. Think about emergency situations. Who experiences more freedom? The person who never prepared, or the person who practiced beforehand? The firefighter trains before the fire. The pilot trains before the emergency. The soldier trains before the battle. Preparation creates calm. Preparation creates confidence. Preparation creates options. Freedom belongs to the prepared. Life works exactly the same way. The disciplined reader can understand complex ideas because they prepared their mind. The disciplined saver remains calm during financial uncertainty because they prepared their finances. The disciplined leader remains steady during crisis because they prepared their character. Preparation is invisible until it becomes essential. Many people chase freedom by avoiding commitment. They refuse routines. They dislike schedules. They reject responsibility. Ironically, those choices often create the least freedom. Without discipline, emotions make every decision. Mood decides whether you work. Motivation decides whether you exercise. Impulse decides whether you spend money. Distraction decides where your attention goes. That isn't freedom. That's slavery to impulse. Real freedom begins when your values become stronger than your emotions. You have a choice. Will your life be directed by discipline or by whatever feeling happens to appear today? Feelings change every hour. Principles remain. That's why disciplined people appear so stable. Not because they never feel tired, not because they never feel afraid, not because they never feel discouraged. They simply refuse to let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. It's not about perfection. It's about preparation. It's not about control over other people. It's about control over yourself. That is where freedom begins. Many people spend their entire lives trying to eliminate responsibility. Disciplined people do something smarter. They master responsibility. Because mastered responsibility eventually produces independence. Every dollar saved expands possibility. Every healthy habit expands capability. Every skill learned expands opportunity. Every promise kept expands confidence. Every disciplined action quietly widens the horizon of your future. One day people look at your life and say, "You are so lucky." No, luck did not create those options. Discipline did. Freedom is purchased. Think about someone who learns valuable skills every year. Reading, writing, communication, leadership, technology, problem solving. At first, learning feels difficult. Years later, employers compete for them. Clients seek them out. Opportunities multiply. Why? Because competence creates choices. And competence is built through disciplined practice. The person who stopped learning because it felt uncomfortable slowly loses options. The person who never stopped learning keeps gaining them. Discipline creates options. That phrase should become part of your identity. Whenever discipline feels restrictive, remember what it is actually buying. It is buying tomorrow's flexibility, tomorrow's confidence, tomorrow's peace, tomorrow's independence. The price may seem high today, but the reward is priceless. The world celebrates freedom. Very few people are willing to purchase it. That is why genuine freedom remains rare. The disciplined person understands that every sacrifice has a purpose. Every routine has a reward. Every standard has a payoff. Nothing is wasted. Everything is building a future where choices become abundant instead of limited. Freedom belongs to the prepared. Freedom is purchased. Discipline creates options. Repeat those words whenever your mind begins searching for the easier path, because the easier path rarely leads to freedom. It usually leads to dependence. The disciplined path may ask more of you today, but one day it will ask less of you than everyone else. And that is the greatest reward discipline can ever give. Now that you understand what discipline ultimately purchases, it's time to confront the hidden habit that quietly destroys discipline before it can produce those rewards. Chapter 5. Stop negotiating with yourself. Every morning, a conversation begins inside your mind. It happens before your feet touch the floor, before your first cup of coffee, before anyone speaks to you. It sounds innocent. Maybe I'll do it later. I'm tired today. I've earned a break. I'll start tomorrow. Most people believe these thoughts are harmless. They aren't. Every one of those conversations is a negotiation, and every unnecessary negotiation slowly weakens your discipline. That's the key. The greatest battle of your life is not against other people. It is not against circumstances. It is not against bad luck. It is against the voice inside your own mind that constantly bargains with your future. You have a choice. You can negotiate with your emotions, or you can lead them. You cannot do both. No more negotiations. Think about what happens when your alarm rings. Your disciplined self already knows the answer. Get up. But then another voice enters the room. You slept late. It's cold outside. You'll work out tomorrow. Just this once. Notice something. Your body hasn't moved, yet your mind is already arguing. The argument itself is the problem, because every negotiation consumes energy. Every debate delays action. Every excuse strengthens hesitation. By the time you've finished arguing with yourself, you've already lost something far more valuable than 5 minutes. You've lost momentum. Discipline hates hesitation. Action loves clarity. The faster you decide, the easier action becomes. Decide once. Most people think disciplined people have stronger willpower. Not necessarily. They simply have fewer internal debates. They made the important decisions long ago. The alarm rings. They get up. Workout time arrives. They train. Reading time comes. They read. Not because they always feel motivated, because the decision has already been made. That's why standards beat motivation. Motivation asks, how do I feel today? Standards ask, what do I do? One question changes every day. The other never changes. Which one would you rather trust? Imagine a professional pilot. Would you want them deciding whether to follow safety procedures based on mood? Of course not. There are standards. Imagine a surgeon. Would you accept, I didn't sterilize my equipment today because I wasn't feeling motivated? Impossible. Standards exist because lives depend on consistency. Now ask yourself, why should your own future deserve anything less? Why should your health depend on your mood? Why should your finances depend on your emotions? Why should your goals depend on your motivation? Standards beat motivation. The strongest people don't wake up inspired every morning. They wake up committed. There is a difference. Inspiration is emotional. Commitment is structural. Inspiration is unpredictable. Commitment is reliable. The world rewards reliability. That's the key. Consider someone who says, I exercise whenever I feel like it. At first, it sounds flexible. Eventually, it becomes infrequent. Now compare them to someone who says, I train every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday at 6 o'clock. There is no discussion, no emotional bargaining, no daily decision, just action. One person depends on feelings. The other depends on standards. Guess who succeeds over the next 10 years? The same principle applies everywhere. I save whatever money is left. Or, I invest 10% before I spend anything. I'll read if I have time. Or, I read 30 minutes every night. I'll apologize when I feel ready. Or, I resolve conflict before I sleep. Standards remove uncertainty. Uncertainty creates delay. Delay creates inconsistency. Inconsistency destroys identity. Think carefully about identity. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens it. Every promise you break weakens it. Your confidence has very little to do with what other people think. It has everything to do with whether you trust yourself. When you repeatedly tell yourself, "I'll do it tomorrow," and tomorrow never comes, something invisible happens. Your mind begins to stop believing you. You become unreliable to yourself. That is a dangerous place to live. Confidence disappears. Self-respect weakens. Action becomes harder. Not because you became less capable, because you taught yourself that your own words carry no weight. No more negotiations. Every time you keep a promise, no matter how small, you rebuild that trust. You become someone whose words mean something, especially to yourself. That is how identity changes. One kept promise at a time. Imagine building a bridge. Every disciplined action adds another steel beam. Every broken promise removes one. Eventually, the bridge either supports your future or collapses beneath it. The choice is being made every single day. You have a choice. Some people negotiate dozens of times before lunch. Should I work? Should I focus? Should I eat healthy? Should I study? Should I exercise? Should I save money? Every decision drains mental energy. By evening, they are exhausted, not from working, from deciding. Disciplined people protect their energy. They automate excellence. They wear similar clothes. They prepare meals. They organize tomorrow before sleeping. They create routines. Not because they love repetition, because repetition protects attention. Attention is limited. Don't waste it on decisions you've already made. Decide once, then execute repeatedly. This is why habits are so powerful. A habit is simply a decision that no longer requires debate. The first time you wake up at 5 in the morning, it feels difficult. The 100th time, it feels normal. The first healthy meal requires discipline. The 1,000th becomes your lifestyle. Discipline eventually becomes identity. Identity eventually becomes automatic. That is the destination. Not forcing yourself forever. Transforming yourself completely. Standards beat motivation. Let's talk about excuses. Excuses are nothing more than emotional negotiations wearing logical clothing. I'm too busy. I'm too tired. This isn't the right time. Things will settle down next month. Most excuses sound intelligent. That's why they are dangerous. They don't need to convince the world. They only need to convince you. Once they do, action disappears. Remember this. Your emotions are excellent servants. They are terrible leaders. If you let them lead your schedule, your life becomes unpredictable. One day, you work hard. The next day, you don't. One week, you're disciplined. The next week, you're distracted. That inconsistency slowly shapes your future. The disciplined person experiences the same emotions. They simply refuse to hand over authority. Fear may speak. Laziness may speak. Comfort may speak. But discipline makes the final decision. That's leadership. Leadership begins with self. It's not about having perfect emotions. It's about refusing to let imperfect emotions control perfect opportunities. No more negotiations. There will always be reasons not to act. There will always be reasons to delay. There will always be reasons to wait. If you wait until every reason disappears, you will wait forever. Action comes first. Confidence follows. Not the other way around. Every great accomplishment begins with someone acting before they felt completely ready. That's the key. Stop asking, "Do I feel like it?" Start asking, "Who do I want to become?" One question creates comfort. The other creates character. When you identify as a disciplined person, many decisions disappear. Of course you train. Of course you keep your word. Of course you finish what you start. It is no longer something you do. It is someone you are. That identity is priceless. Protect it. Strengthen it. Live according to it. Standards beat motivation. No more negotiations. Decide once. Repeat those 3 truths every time your mind begins bargaining with your future. Every negotiation delays growth. Every standard accelerates it. Your life will not change because you occasionally make the right decision. It will change because you remove the possibility of making the wrong one. That is the hidden power of discipline. It eliminates unnecessary choices so you can focus on meaningful ones. And once you stop negotiating with yourself, something remarkable happens. Your actions become consistent. Your confidence becomes real. Your identity becomes unshakable. Now that your standards are stronger than your emotions, you're ready to discover the quiet force that turns ordinary effort into extraordinary results over time. Chapter 6. The Invisible Rewards of Consistency. One of the biggest reasons people quit is simple. They expect visible results too early. They work hard for a week. Nothing changes. They stay disciplined for a month. Life looks almost the same. They build a new habit. The mirror barely reflects it. So they reach a dangerous conclusion. This isn't working. But they are wrong. The process is working. They simply cannot see it yet. That's the key. Growth is almost always invisible before it becomes undeniable. A seed spends weeks growing underground before anyone sees a single leaf. A building requires months of hidden foundation before walls begin to rise. Nature understands something that human beings often forget. The most important work happens where nobody can see it. Your life follows the same law. Consistency is accumulating. Remember those words, because they will carry you through every season when progress feels invisible. Imagine putting $1 into an investment every single day. The first few days feel insignificant. The account barely changes. Months later, it still seems small. But over time, something remarkable begins to happen. Growth starts creating more growth. Momentum builds upon momentum. What once looked insignificant becomes extraordinary. The same principle exists far beyond money. It governs your body, your mind, your character, your relationships, your career. Everything compounds. Progress is happening before you see it. Most people quit because they mistake invisible progress for no progress. Those are not the same thing. Think about learning a new language. The first day, you memorize 10 words. The second day, you forget 5. The third day, you feel confused. Weeks later, conversations still seem impossible. Many people stop there. They conclude they lack talent. But the disciplined learner continues, day after day, word after word, mistake after mistake. Then, one ordinary afternoon, something surprising happens. They understand an entire sentence without translating it. Weeks later, they hold a conversation. Months later, they think in another language. The breakthrough looked sudden. It wasn't. Thousands of invisible moments created it. Consistency is accumulating. Building muscle follows the same pattern. The first workout leaves you sore. The 10th workout leaves you wondering whether anything has changed. The 20th workout still feels ordinary. Then one morning someone says, "You look stronger." You look in the mirror. For the first time, you notice it. Did your body transform overnight? Of course not. It transformed one repetition at a time, one healthy meal at a time, one early morning at a time. Progress was happening long before you recognized it. Trust the process. Imagine writing a book. No one writes 300 pages in one afternoon. Writers build books one page at a time, sometimes one paragraph, sometimes one sentence. There are days when inspiration disappears. There are days when every word feels wrong. Yet disciplined writers continue. Eventually, scattered pages become chapters. Chapters become manuscripts. Manuscripts become books. The finished work appears impressive. The daily effort looked ordinary. That is how extraordinary things are built. Ordinary actions, repeated consistently. Think about starting a business. During the first months, very few customers notice you. Very little profit appears. Many days feel discouraging. Every phone call, every meeting, every improvement, every satisfied customer seems too small to matter. But consistency is quietly building trust. Trust becomes reputation. Reputation becomes referrals. Referrals become growth. People suddenly call the business an overnight success. They ignored the years of invisible accumulation. Progress is happening before you see it. The world celebrates breakthroughs. Discipline celebrates repetition. There is a profound difference. Breakthroughs are simply repetitions finally becoming visible. That is why disciplined people don't obsess over immediate results. They obsess over today's actions. Because today's actions become tomorrow's outcomes. You have a choice. Focus on what you can control, or become frustrated by what you cannot. You cannot control exactly when results appear. You can control whether you show up today. You cannot force the harvest. You can plant the seed. You cannot rush growth. You can remain faithful to the process. That's the key. Many people underestimate what 1 year of consistency can accomplish. They overestimate what 1 week can accomplish. This is why impatience destroys potential. Imagine 2 people joining a gym. The first person weighs themselves every morning, measures every muscle, checks the mirror every hour. When dramatic change doesn't appear after 2 weeks, they quit. The second person follows the program, shows up, works hard, goes home, repeats. They stop chasing daily proof. Instead, they build daily discipline. 12 months later, their lives no longer resemble each other. One chased results, the other built habits. Habits always outlast motivation. Consistency is accumulating. Now think about trust. Trust between 2 people is not created in one grand gesture. It is built through hundreds of small moments. Keeping promises, arriving on time, speaking honestly, being reliable. Each action seems insignificant. Together, they become character. The opposite is also true. Trust rarely disappears because of one mistake. It disappears because of repeated inconsistency. Everything compounds. Good or bad. Discipline or neglect. Growth or decline. Every repeated action strengthens something. Ask yourself, what am I strengthening? Every hour of focused work strengthens concentration. Every hour of distraction strengthens distraction. Every healthy choice strengthens discipline. Every excuse strengthens weakness. Whether you notice it or not, something is accumulating. Your habits are never standing still. They are either moving you forward or quietly pulling you backward. Trust the process. One of the greatest mistakes people make is comparing their beginning to someone else's middle. They see someone successful and assume progress came quickly. They don't see the invisible years. the failed attempts, the quiet mornings, the lonely evenings, the repeated routines. Success rarely announces the process. It only reveals the outcome. Don't compare outcomes. Compare commitment. The process belongs to everyone. Those who stay eventually separate themselves from those who leave. That is the true advantage of discipline. It doesn't ask you to be extraordinary today. It simply asks you not to quit today. Tomorrow, it asks the same thing. Then again, and again. The remarkable future you dream about is nothing more than ordinary consistency repeated long enough. That's why discipline often feels boring. Repetition lacks excitement. Routine lacks drama. But drama rarely produces mastery. Consistency does. Look at nature again. The sun rises every morning. The seasons arrive in order. The ocean slowly shapes mountains. Not through one enormous wave, through countless ordinary waves. Power often looks repetitive. Greatness often looks ordinary, until enough time has passed. Then everyone calls it extraordinary. Progress is happening before you see it. Never confuse silence with stagnation. Roots grow in silence. Character grows in silence. Wisdom grows in silence. Confidence grows in silence. The strongest transformations happen without applause, without recognition, without immediate reward. That is why discipline requires faith, not blind faith. Earned faith, faith that today's effort is creating tomorrow's opportunity, even when you cannot yet measure it, even when nobody notices, even when you doubt yourself. Trust the process. Because the process has transformed every great athlete, every great leader, every great artist, every great entrepreneur, every great parent, every great teacher. No one escapes repetition. No one bypasses consistency. Mastery belongs to those who continue long after excitement disappears. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. It's not about perfection. It's about repetition. It's not about moving fast. It's about refusing to stop. Consistency is accumulating. Progress is happening before you see it. Trust the process. Repeat those words whenever impatience tempts you to abandon your future. Because the greatest rewards in life almost always arrive quietly. They build beneath the surface. They gather strength in silence. Then one day, what seemed impossible suddenly becomes your new reality. Not because of one extraordinary effort, because of thousands of ordinary ones. Now you understand why consistency eventually changes everything. The next lesson is even more practical, because extraordinary lives are not built through occasional heroic sacrifices. They are built by paying one small price every single day. Chapter 7. Pay the small price. Every day, people often believe extraordinary lives require extraordinary effort. That belief keeps them stuck, because extraordinary effort sounds exhausting, impossible, unsustainable. So they wait. They wait for more time, more energy, more confidence, more motivation. Meanwhile, the disciplined person quietly changes their life, not through giant sacrifices, through tiny daily payments. That's the secret. The greatest victories in life are usually purchased with the smallest consistent actions. Small payments prevent large debts. Remember that. One push-up today seems insignificant. One page read today seems insignificant. One healthy meal seems insignificant. Saving $10 seems insignificant. Making your bed seems insignificant. Walking for 20 minutes seems insignificant. By themselves, they appear almost meaningless. Together, they become a different life. That is the power of small daily discipline. Every day counts. Imagine two people standing at the bottom of a mountain. One says, "I'll climb the whole mountain tomorrow." The other says, "I'll take the next step today." Who reaches the top? Always the person focused on the next step. Never the person waiting for the perfect day. The mountain is climbed one step at a time. A fortune is built $1 at a time. A strong body is built one workout at a time. A remarkable life is built one disciplined decision at a time. The next decision matters. That's the key. People often ask, "What is the one thing that changed your life?" It is the wrong question. Lives rarely change because of one decision. They change because of thousands of similar decisions. The decision to wake up when the alarm rings. The decision to tell the truth. The decision to finish the task. The decision to walk instead of sitting. The decision to read instead of scrolling. The decision to save instead of spending. Each decision looks ordinary. Each decision quietly shapes destiny. You have a choice. Never underestimate the power of ordinary moments, because ordinary moments eventually become extraordinary outcomes. Think about brushing your teeth. It takes only a few minutes. Miss one day. Nothing dramatic happens. Miss 1 week. You begin noticing changes. Miss months. The consequences become impossible to ignore. Now reverse the process. Brush consistently for years. You preserve something valuable with almost no daily effort. Discipline works exactly like that. Tiny effort. Massive reward. Small payments prevent large debts. The same principle applies to your finances. Many people dream about becoming wealthy. Few understand how wealth is usually built. Not through dramatic events, through ordinary habits. Saving a little every paycheck. Avoiding unnecessary purchases. Investing consistently. Living below your means. Those actions rarely impress anyone. But years later, they create freedom. The person making tiny disciplined payments enjoys enormous flexibility. The person avoiding those payments eventually makes enormous sacrifices. The bill always arrives. Every day counts. Now think about your relationships. Strong marriages are rarely built by expensive vacations. Strong friendships are rarely built by grand speeches. Trust grows through tiny moments, listening carefully, keeping promises, being present, sending the message, making the phone call, saying, "I'm proud of you. I'm sorry. I appreciate you." Those moments take minutes, but they accumulate into lifelong relationships. Neglect works the same way. One forgotten promise, one ignored conversation, one selfish decision. Repeated often enough, distance replaces closeness. The next decision matters. Every small interaction either builds trust or weakens it. There is no neutral moment. Now consider your health again. People often imagine transformation requires perfection. It doesn't. Walk today. Drink more water today. Sleep 30 minutes earlier tonight. Stretch for 5 minutes. Choose one healthier meal. Repeat. Tomorrow, repeat again. Months later, your body begins thanking you. Not because you changed everything, because you changed something, repeatedly. That's the key. Discipline becomes overwhelming only when you try to change your entire life overnight. Don't change everything. Change the next decision. That is enough. Ask yourself, what is the next right decision? Not, how do I fix my whole life? Those are completely different questions. One creates action, the other creates paralysis. The next decision matters. Imagine trying to steer a massive ship across the ocean. You don't turn it 90 degrees all at once. You make tiny adjustments, 1 degree, then another. Eventually, the destination changes completely. Your life works the same way. Small corrections, repeated consistently. Create extraordinary destinations. Many people fail because they worship intensity. They work 12 hours one day, then accomplish nothing for the next 4. They exercise until exhaustion, then quit for 3 weeks. They become inspired, then disappear. Intensity feels exciting. Consistency changes lives. The disciplined person understands this. They don't ask, "What is the maximum I can do today?" They ask, "What can I repeat tomorrow?" That question builds habits. Habits build identity. Identity builds destiny. Every day counts. Let's remove another dangerous myth. You do not need motivation to take the next step. You only need a standard. Some mornings you will feel energetic. Other mornings you won't. Some evenings you will feel inspired. Other evenings you will feel empty. Your feelings are temporary. Your standards must remain permanent. That is why discipline outlasts motivation. The disciplined person still reads when tired, still trains when bored, still saves money when tempted, still keeps promises when convenient excuses appear. Not because those actions suddenly became easy, because they became non-negotiable. The next decision matters. Think about a bricklayer building a cathedral. One brick doesn't look impressive, neither does the second, or the 100th. Visitors walking by might wonder whether anything meaningful is happening. Years later, they stand beneath magnificent architecture. Nobody admires individual bricks. They admire what repetition created. Your habits are those bricks. Every disciplined choice places another one. Every excuse removes one. What kind of structure are you building? You have a choice. The disciplined life is not built through heroic moments. It is built through faithful moments. Faithful to your schedule. Faithful to your promises. Faithful to your values. Faithful to your future. That kind of faithfulness rarely receives applause, but it always produces results. People often ask successful individuals, "What was your breakthrough?" The better question would be, "What ordinary action did you refuse to stop doing?" Because success usually hides inside repetition. The musician practiced scales. The athlete trained fundamentals. The entrepreneur served one customer at a time. The author wrote one page each day. The leader kept one promise after another. Nothing magical happened. Nothing dramatic happened. Everything accumulated. Small payments prevent large debts. There will be days when your effort feels invisible. Do it anyway. There will be days when nobody notices. Continue anyway. There will be days when progress seems impossible to measure. Trust today's discipline anyway. Because today's invisible effort becomes tomorrow's visible advantage. Remember this. You are never just making today's decision. You are teaching tomorrow's version of yourself how to live. Every disciplined action makes the next disciplined action slightly easier. Every excuse makes the next excuse slightly easier. You're creating momentum. Choose its direction carefully. Every day counts. Some days you will only have enough energy for one small disciplined action. Good. Do that one thing. Read one page. Do 10 push-ups. Save $1. Write one paragraph. Take one walk. Drink one glass of water. Keep one promise. Never underestimate one disciplined decision, because one decision becomes another. Another becomes a habit. A habit becomes a lifestyle. A lifestyle becomes your legacy. The next decisions matters. Repeat those words every morning. Repeat them every afternoon. Repeat them every evening. Because your future is never built all at once. It is built one decision at a time. One payment at a time. One ordinary day at a time. Small payments prevent large debts. Every day counts. The next decision matters. Master those 3 truths, and you will stop waiting for dramatic change. Instead, you will begin creating it. Quietly, patiently, relentlessly. Now that you understand how small daily disciplines build extraordinary results, it is time to discover the greatest reward of all. How every disciplined action quietly transforms not just what you do, but who you become. Chapter 8. Discipline builds the person. You become. Most people have the wrong goal. They chase results, more money, a better body, a promotion, a successful business, recognition, respect. Those goals are not wrong, but they are incomplete, because every result you see in the world is merely a reflection of something deeper. Identity. That's the key. Your life does not consistently produce what you want. It consistently produces who you are. If you want to change your future, you must first change the person creating it. Identity comes first. Remember that. Because this chapter may be the most important lesson in this entire audiobook. People often say, "I want to become healthy. I want to become successful. I want to become disciplined." Listen carefully to those words. They focus on having, not becoming. The disciplined person asks a different question. Who must I become to naturally produce those results? That question changes everything. Imagine 2 people trying to quit smoking. The first says, "I'm trying not to smoke." The second says, "I don't smoke." The behavior may look identical. The identity is completely different. One person is resisting temptation. The other has changed their self-image. Eventually, identity always wins. That is why lasting transformation never begins with behavior alone. It begins with belief. Not blind belief. Repeated belief earned through repeated action. Identity comes first. Every disciplined action is a vote, not for your future, for your identity. Every time you wake up when you promised yourself you would, you cast another vote. I am someone who keeps promises. Every time you finish difficult work instead of avoiding it, another vote. I am someone who finishes. Every time you choose honesty over convenience, another vote. I am someone of integrity. No single vote decides the election, but thousands of votes eventually make the outcome undeniable. Your identity is built exactly the same way. One decision at a time, one habit at a time, one ordinary day at a time. You are becoming someone. Ask yourself this question: who are your habits introducing you to? Because every repeated action is shaping a future version of yourself. You're never simply reading a book. You're becoming a reader. You're never simply exercising. You're becoming an athlete in mindset. You're never simply saving money. You're becoming financially responsible. You're never simply telling the truth. You're becoming trustworthy. Behavior is temporary. Identity is permanent. That is why identity matters more. Think about a tree. What do you notice first? The fruit. But the fruit is only evidence. The real story exists beneath the ground. The roots. Healthy roots eventually produce healthy fruit. Weak roots eventually produce weak fruit. Most people spend their lives painting the fruit. Disciplined people strengthen the roots. Identity comes first. The fruit always follows. This is why chasing appearances is exhausting. Imagine someone pretending to be confident. They memorize body language, practice powerful handshakes, repeat positive affirmations. Those things may help. But unless confidence becomes part of their identity, the performance eventually collapses. Now imagine someone who repeatedly does difficult things, keeps promises, faces fear, accepts responsibility. They no longer need to pretend. Confidence becomes inevitable because it was built from evidence. Real confidence isn't manufactured, it is accumulated. That's the key. Many people ask, how do I become more disciplined? The answer surprises them. Stop trying to perform discipline. Start becoming a disciplined person. There is a difference. One depends on effort. The other depends on identity. A disciplined person doesn't constantly ask, should I work today? That question no longer exists. Working has become part of who they are. An honest person doesn't constantly debate whether to tell the truth. A generous person doesn't constantly debate whether to help. Identity eliminates unnecessary decisions. That's why identity is so powerful. Become before you achieve. Imagine an actor preparing for a role. They don't simply memorize lines. They study the character. They think like them, walk like them, speak like them. Eventually, they stop acting. They become believable. Your life works the same way. If you continue identifying as someone who quits, procrastinates, complains, or avoids responsibility, your actions will keep supporting that identity. Not because you're incapable of change, because identity always seeks consistency. Your mind wants your actions to match your beliefs. Change the belief. Your actions begin changing too. You're becoming someone. The question is, who? Many people unknowingly strengthen the wrong identity every day. I'm terrible with money. I'm lazy. I never finish anything. I'm always late. I'm just not disciplined. Every time they repeat those statements, they reinforce them. Then they act accordingly. Not because the statements were true, because they became accepted. Stop speaking about yourself as if your past is your permanent future. Your past describes you. It does not define you. Your next decision matters more than your last mistake. Every disciplined action begins rewriting your story. Identity comes first. Let's make this practical. Instead of saying, I need to exercise, say, I am someone who takes care of my body. Instead of saying, I have to save money, say, I am someone who respects my future. Instead of saying, I should read more, say, I am a lifelong learner. Notice the difference. One sounds like obligation. The other sounds like identity. Identity creates consistency. Consistency creates results. Results reinforce identity. That cycle becomes incredibly powerful. Successful people understand this, whether they realize it or not. The great writer identifies as someone who writes, even when inspiration disappears. The entrepreneur identifies as someone who solves problems, even when the business struggles. The athlete identifies as someone who trains, even during the off-season. The leader identifies as someone who serves, even when nobody is watching. Identity carries them through moments when motivation cannot. Become before you achieve. There will be days when your results don't reflect your effort. Don't panic. Results are delayed. Identity is immediate. The moment you keep your word, you become more trustworthy. The moment you face fear, you become braver. The moment you choose discipline over comfort, you become stronger. Transformation doesn't begin after the outcome. It begins with the action. That action becomes evidence. Evidence becomes belief. Belief becomes identity. Identity becomes destiny. That's the process. Never underestimate the importance of small victories. Making your bed, finishing your workout, reading one chapter, keeping one promise. Those actions are not important because of what they accomplish. They are important because of what they prove. They prove that you are changing. Not someday. Today. You're becoming someone. Think about a sculptor standing before a block of marble. Each strike of the chisel seems insignificant. One chip falls away, then another. Visitors might see only dust. The sculptor sees transformation. Eventually, a masterpiece appears. Was it created by one powerful strike? No, it was created by thousands of patient ones. Your identity is carved exactly the same way. Every disciplined choice removes another piece of the person you no longer wish to be. Every honest decision reveals more of the person you were always capable of becoming. That is why discipline is never merely about productivity. It is about identity. It's not about finishing one workout. It's about becoming someone who never abandons themselves. It's not about saving $1. It's about becoming someone who values tomorrow. It's not about reading one book. It's about becoming someone whose mind never stops growing. You have a choice. Every day, you're casting votes. Some votes strengthen your future. Some strengthen your past. Which version of yourself are you electing? The disciplined version, or the comfortable version? Remember, your life will eventually reflect whichever identity receives the most votes. That is unavoidable. Success is not magic. It is evidence. Visible evidence of an invisible identity that has been patiently built over years. People see the successful business. They don't see the disciplined owner. They see the healthy body. They don't see the disciplined habits. They see the confident speaker. They don't see the thousands of uncomfortable conversations that built that confidence. The result is public. The identity was private. Identity comes first. Become before you achieve. You are becoming someone. Repeat those 3 truths until they become the foundation of your thinking. Because the greatest achievement of discipline is not the money you earn, or the goals you accomplish, or the recognition you receive. The greatest achievement of discipline is becoming someone you can trust, someone who keeps promises, someone who finishes difficult things, someone who no longer needs perfect conditions to take action. That person is your greatest reward. And once you become that person, success is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you naturally create. Now that you understand how discipline transforms your identity, the final lesson is to see how the world inevitably responds to that identity, and why reliable people become the ones entrusted with life's greatest opportunities. Chapter 9. The World Rewards. Reliable people talent gets attention. Reliability gets opportunity. Talent opens the door. Reliability keeps it open. That is one of the greatest truths successful people eventually discover. The world is full of talented people, but truly reliable people are rare. And rarity always has value. That's the key. Think about the people you trust most. Not the smartest, not the funniest, not the most charismatic. The ones you trust. Why do you trust them? Because they show up. They keep their word. They do what they said they would do. Again, and again, and again. Trust was not built in one dramatic moment. It was built through consistency. Trust follows consistency. Remember that. Every promise kept becomes another brick. Every promise broken removes one. Eventually, people stop listening to what you say. They simply expect what you always do. That expectation is your reputation, and your reputation is one of the most valuable assets you will ever own. Reliability earns respect. Imagine an employer with 2 employees. The first is brilliant, creative, exceptionally talented, but unpredictable. Sometimes they produce amazing work. Other times they disappear, miss deadlines, forget commitments, offer excuses. The second employee is less naturally gifted, but every assignment is completed. Every deadline is met. Every commitment is honored. Who receives greater responsibility? Who earns promotions? Who becomes indispensable? Most of the time, it is not the most talented person. It is the most reliable person. Because organizations cannot build their future around uncertainty. They build around consistency. Talent may impress people. Reliability allows people to depend on you. That dependence creates opportunity. Trust follows consistency. This principle extends far beyond the workplace. Imagine a family. One parent constantly makes promises. We'll spend time together. I'll be there. We'll take that trip. Sometimes they follow through. Sometimes they don't. Children learn something. Words don't always mean action. Now imagine another parent. They make fewer promises, but they keep nearly all of them. Slowly, something invisible develops. Security, confidence, trust. The children stop wondering whether they can depend on their parent. They already know. Reliability earns respect, not because of dramatic speeches, because of ordinary consistency. Friendships work the same way. People rarely remember your perfect advice. They remember whether you showed up. Were you there when life became difficult? Did you answer the phone? Did you keep your confidence? Did you arrive when you promised? Those moments define relationships. Character compounds. Every dependable action strengthens your name. Every unreliable action weakens it. Many people spend years trying to become more impressive. Very few spend years becoming more dependable. The second path creates far greater rewards. Think about clients in business. Imagine hiring someone to renovate your home. One contractor is charming, makes impressive promises, shows beautiful photos, but frequently misses deadlines, ignores phone calls, changes prices unexpectedly. Another contractor communicates clearly, arrives on time, does exactly what was agreed. Completes the project with integrity. Which contractor receives recommendations? Which contractor builds a lasting business? Not necessarily the most talented one, the most reliable one. That's because people buy certainty. They buy peace of mind. They buy trust. Trust follows consistency. The same principle exists in leadership. Many people believe leaders inspire people through powerful speeches. Sometimes they do. But lasting leadership is built differently. Leaders become trustworthy because they remain consistent. Their standards don't change when circumstances change. Their integrity doesn't disappear under pressure. Their values don't shift with popularity. People follow them because they know what to expect. Consistency creates confidence. Confidence creates influence. Influence creates leadership. That's the process. Reliability earns respect. You have a choice. Every day you're teaching people how seriously they should take your words. When you consistently arrive late, people stop expecting punctuality. When you consistently break promises, people stop believing commitments. When you consistently complain, people stop expecting solutions. But when you consistently deliver, people notice, even if they never mention it. Respect grows quietly. Trust grows quietly. Opportunity grows quietly. Character compounds. That phrase is deeper than it first appears. Most people understand compound interest. Small investments become large fortunes through time. Character works exactly the same way. Every honest decision earns invisible interest. Every disciplined habit earns invisible interest. Every difficult promise you keep earns invisible interest. One day, the accumulated value becomes impossible to ignore. People say, "I've always trusted you. I knew you would handle it. I knew I could count on you." Those statements were not earned in one day. They were compounded over years. Character compounds. Now consider the opposite. One lie, one excuse, one broken promise, one careless decision. By themselves, they seem small. Repeated often enough, they also compound. Eventually, people stop calling, stop recommending, stop depending on you. Not because they hate you, because uncertainty creates risk. People naturally move towards certainty. That certainty is built through discipline. It's not about perfection. No one is perfect. Reliable people still make mistakes. The difference is simple. They take responsibility. They apologize. They fix problems. They learn. They don't hide. They don't blame. They don't disappear. That response creates even more trust, because responsibility is part of reliability. That's the key. Imagine two entrepreneurs whose companies make serious mistakes. The first blames employees, makes excuses, avoids customers, protects pride. The second admits the mistake immediately, communicates honestly, repairs the damage, learns from the failure. Which company earns lasting loyalty? Often the second, because trust is strengthened whenever honesty becomes more important than ego. Reliability earns respect. Let's talk about self-respect. Everything we've discussed about other people's trust also applies to your relationship with yourself. Do you trust yourself? When you make a promise to wake up early, do you believe it? When you promise to finish the project, do you believe yourself? When you promise to change, does your own mind quietly laugh because you've heard it before? That question matters, because self-trust is the foundation of confidence. Confidence is not believing you will never fail. Confidence is believing you will keep showing up, even after failure. The disciplined person slowly becomes someone they can rely on. That changes everything. When life becomes difficult, they don't wonder, will I quit? They already know the answer. No, because reliability has become identity. Character compounds. The world notices reliable people because reliability removes uncertainty. Imagine a captain steering a ship through a violent storm. Would the crew prefer the captain with the highest IQ, or the captain who has repeatedly demonstrated calm judgment under pressure? In moments of uncertainty, consistency becomes priceless. The same is true in business. The same is true in marriage. The same is true in parenting. The same is true in friendship. People follow reliability because reliability creates safety. You don't need to become the loudest person in the room. You don't need to become the most talented person in the room. You don't need everyone's admiration. Become the most dependable person in the room. Eventually, people will begin trusting you with greater responsibility. Greater responsibility creates greater opportunity. Greater opportunity creates greater success. Talent may get you invited. Reliability keeps you seated at the table. Trust follows consistency. Think about your future. 5 years from now, what would happen if every person who knows you could honestly say, they always keep their word. They always finish what they start. They always do the difficult thing. Imagine the doors that would open. Imagine the relationships that would deepen. Imagine the confidence you would carry. That future begins today. One promise, one habit, one decision, one ordinary act of consistency. Repeated until reliability becomes inseparable from your name. Reliability earns respect. Trust follows consistency. Character compounds. Repeat those 3 truths every time discipline feels invisible, because people may not notice today's effort, but they will eventually experience its results. And once your character becomes your reputation, opportunities begin finding you instead of you chasing them. That is one of discipline's greatest rewards. You have now learned how discipline earns the trust of the world. In the final chapter, everything comes together into one simple truth. The disciplined life is not about paying more than everyone else. It is about choosing the one price that leads to a lifetime of freedom. Chapter 10. Pay the price. Once, enjoy the reward. Forever you have reached the final chapter. But this is not the end. It is the beginning of a different way of living. Everything you have heard in this audiobook leads to one simple truth. Life never asks whether you will pay. It only asks what you will pay with. You will either pay with discipline, or you will pay with regret. You will either pay with preparation, or you will pay with panic. You will either pay with consistency, or you will pay with consequences. There has never been another option. There never will be. That's the key. Most people spend their lives searching for an easier path, a shortcut, a secret, a miracle, a moment when discipline will no longer be necessary. They wait for life to become easier. But life does not become easier because you waited. Life becomes easier because you became stronger. There is a profound difference. The disciplined person does not wake up one day and discover that challenges have disappeared. They wake up and realize challenges no longer control them. That is freedom. That is the reward. Pay now, prosper later. Those 4 words can change an entire life. Look back at everything we have learned. Everything has a price. Comfort always sends the invoice later. The pain you avoid never disappears. Discipline buys freedom. Standards beat motivation. Consistency creates invisible rewards. Small daily actions transform your future. Identity comes before achievement. Reliability earns respect. Each lesson points toward the same destination. Choose today's discipline instead of tomorrow's regret. That is the philosophy of a disciplined life. Many people misunderstand sacrifice. They believe discipline takes something away. They think discipline steals pleasure, consumes time, limits freedom. But discipline does not take. It exchanges. It asks you to give up what you want now so you can receive what you truly want later. That exchange is never a loss. Discipline is never a loss. Think about the strongest tree in a forest. It survived storms, long winters, powerful winds, years of drought. Its strength was not built during peaceful days. Its strength was purchased through resistance. Your character grows exactly the same way. Every difficult morning, every uncomfortable decision, every promise you keep, every temptation you resist, every responsibility you accept. You're strengthening roots that future storms will never break. That is why discipline matters. Not because life will become easier, because you will become harder to defeat. The price becomes your power. Remember when we spoke about comfort. Comfort whispered, "Wait until tomorrow." Discipline whispered, "Begin today." Which voice shaped your life? Remember when we spoke about avoided pain. Every responsibility delayed became heavier. Every difficult conversation postponed became larger. Every habit ignored became more expensive. Discipline taught you something different. Face the small challenge today. Avoid the massive crisis tomorrow. Pay now, prosper later. Remember consistency. There were days when your progress was invisible. Nothing seemed to change. You questioned the process. You questioned yourself. Yet every disciplined action accumulated beneath the surface. One day, invisible effort became visible transformation. The miracle was never sudden. The miracle was consistency. Remember identity. You stopped asking, "What do I need to accomplish?" Instead, you began asking, "Who am I becoming?" That question changes everything, because success is temporary. Identity lasts. Money can disappear. Titles can disappear. Recognition can disappear. But character remains. No one can take away the discipline you have built. No one can steal the habits you have earned. No one can erase the strength you have developed through repeated effort. The price becomes your power. Now imagine two versions of yourself. The first continues living exactly as before, waiting, delaying, negotiating, complaining, searching for motivation. Years quietly disappear. One day, that version wakes up surrounded by consequences they never intended to create. Not because they were unlucky, because every avoided payment eventually became a debt. Now imagine the second version. They begin today. Not perfectly. Simply, honestly. They wake up when they promised. Keep one commitment. Read one chapter. Exercise 1 hour. Save $1. Tell one difficult truth. Repeat tomorrow. Then the next day. Years later, they hardly recognize themselves. Confidence replaces doubt. Freedom replaces dependence. Peace replaces chaos. Not because life became generous, because discipline quietly transformed them. Which future will belong to you? You have a choice. Every sunrise offers the same invitation. Who will make today's decisions? Comfort or character? Fear or discipline? Excuses or responsibility? The answer is never found once. It is answered every single day. That is why discipline is not an event. It is an identity. Many people hope one extraordinary opportunity will change everything. But extraordinary opportunities usually arrive disguised as ordinary responsibilities. The disciplined person accepts those responsibilities. The undisciplined person waits for something bigger. Eventually, the disciplined person becomes extraordinary. Not because they chased greatness, because they mastered ordinary days. That is how greatness is always built. One ordinary day, repeated extraordinarily well. Discipline is never a loss. You lose nothing by becoming healthier. You lose nothing by becoming trustworthy. You lose nothing by becoming financially responsible. You lose nothing by becoming emotionally stronger. You're exchanging weakness for strength, confusion for clarity, dependence for freedom, fear for confidence. Every disciplined action is an investment that continues paying dividends long after the effort is forgotten. Think about the person you have become while listening to this audiobook. Perhaps nothing dramatic has changed yet. That is perfectly normal. Real transformation rarely announces itself. It begins quietly, with a different thought, a different standard, a different decision. Those tiny internal shifts eventually reshape an entire life. Never underestimate what one decision can begin. The decision to stop making excuses. The decision to stop negotiating with yourself. The decision to keep your word. The decision to become reliable. The decision to embrace discomfort. The decision to pay today's price with gratitude instead of resentment. Those decisions are the birthplace of every extraordinary future. The price becomes your power. One day, people will look at your life. They will admire your calm, your confidence, your opportunities, your freedom, your discipline. Some will call you gifted. Others will call you lucky. Only you will know the truth. You paid for it. Quietly, patiently, daily. While others waited, while others complained, while others searched for easier roads, you simply kept making the next disciplined decision, again and again and again. That is how remarkable lives are built, not through one heroic moment, through thousands of faithful ones. So stop waiting for easier days. Become the person who makes difficult days easier. Stop waiting for perfect motivation. Become the person who acts regardless of emotion. Stop hoping for a better future. Build it. Starting now. Pay now. Prosper later. Discipline is never a loss. The price becomes your power. Repeat those words until they become more than sentences. Let them become your philosophy. Let them become your identity. Let them become your legacy. Because one day, when people ask how you created a life of freedom, strength, peace, and purpose, your answer will be remarkably simple. You paid the right price. Before the reward arrived, and because you were willing to do what most people avoided, you now live a life that most people only imagine. That is the true price of a disciplined life, and it is worth paying every single day. You've reached the end of this audiobook, but your real work begins now. Remember this truth. Every life comes with a bill. Some people pay with discipline, others pay with regret. Some pay with effort today. Others pay with disappointment tomorrow. The price never disappears. It only changes form. Every morning gives you another chance to make your payment. Every difficult decision strengthens your future. Every disciplined action buys another piece of the life you want. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop believing success is free. It never has been. It never will be. From this moment forward, become the person who gladly pays the price because you understand what it purchases. Build your habits. Protect your standards. Keep your promises to yourself. Pay the price today, and let tomorrow become the reward. If this audiobook challenged the way you think, then don't just listen. Live it. Starting today, make one disciplined choice that your future self will thank you for.